Story 1. The gas station didn't have a door. The road stretched thin under the sun, a ribbon of faded black running through endless dust. I hadn't passed another car in nearly an hour. Just the whine of the engine and the dry hiss of wind scraping across the cracked windshield. I wasn't in a rush. That was the point of the trip. No destination, no schedule. Just me, the truck, and silence. I lit a cigarette I didn't need. Habit. Something about the smell made the cab feel less hollow. In the rearview, my eyes looked duller than I remembered. Sleepless, maybe. Or just tired in a way that rest doesn't fix. The fuel gauge hovered near empty. I should have filled up back in Ely, but I'd told myself there'd be another stop ahead. There always was. Except now, the road was nothing but beige scrub, dead grass, and those odd telephone poles that ran like shadows along the asphalt, never quite parallel, never completely upright. A sign came into view. It was rusted, half buried in sand, and tilted like it had been pushed from behind. Service, 2 miles. No arrow. No station name. Just that. I exhaled smoke and turned down the radio. Static. I hadn't noticed it before, but the reception had dropped off miles ago. I let the silence settle. 2 miles passed. Then 3. Then 4. Nothing but heat rising from the road and my own pulse in my ears. I was about to turn around when the structure appeared, low, square, and pale yellow, like it had been painted once and then forgotten. It sat alone off the shoulder, a small building with a single pump out front. No lights. No signs. Just a pump, a boxy storefront, and the faint shimmer of heat warping its outline. I pulled in. There were no other vehicles. The pavement was too smooth, like no one had ever parked there. I stepped out and was hit by silence. Not just the absence of noise, but something deeper. Like the desert itself was holding its breath. The pump clicked when I lifted the nozzle. No card slot. No price display. Just a faded sticker that read regular. I pushed the nozzle into the tank, half expecting it not to work. But it did. Gas flowed, smooth and fast. The total didn't change. The dial stayed frozen at $0. I stood there, listening to it fill, watching the dust roll past in lazy spirals. The air was hotter near the building, as if something behind the walls radiated warmth. There were no windows, just that single glass front. But I couldn't see inside. It reflected the sky in a strange, watery way, like the glass was thicker than normal. Almost warped. Then I realized, there was no door. Not on the front. Not on the side. Just walls, smooth and seamless. The pump stopped with a solid click. I returned the nozzle and looked again. Still no door. No handle. Just glass and pale yellow siding. Then my own reflection blinked. I didn't move. My hands were still at my sides. My eyes were open. But the reflection, just for a moment, had blinked. I turned fast, half expecting someone behind me. Nothing. Just the road, the scrub, and the hum of heat. I looked back at the glass. Now it was still. Just me, tired and sweaty in a loose black t-shirt, the sun behind me. I walked closer. Tried to see inside. But it was like peering into fog. No shelves, no lights, no counter. Just a dull gray that deepened as I pressed my forehead to the glass. And then, I was inside. I didn't open a door. I didn't feel a breeze. One moment, I was leaning forward. The next, my boots were scuffing clean tile. Behind me, nothing. No glass. No pump. No truck. Just shelves. Rows of perfectly stocked items, clean, aligned, and wrong. Old brands, outdated logos. Cigarette packs with names I hadn't seen since I was a kid. Soda cans with pull tabs. A small fridge humming faintly, stocked with milk that expired in 1997. The air was cool. Smelled faintly of bleach and copper. I walked slowly, hearing only my own footsteps. At the back of the room was a counter. Behind it, a man stood. Mid-50s, maybe. Wearing a brown uniform. He didn't smile. "Hey," I said, my voice quieter than I expected. He nodded. I approached the counter. Up close, his eyes didn't quite match, one brown, one hazel. His name tag read Tim. No last name. No logo. "You got a restroom?" He tilted his head, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. "Used to," he said. "Then the storm came through." "There hasn't been a storm." "Not yet." Behind him, the wall clock ticked. Loudly. Tick. 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 Then, backward. I stared at it. "Your clock's broken." "No. It just forgets sometimes." I took a step back. The floor creaked beneath my boot, though it looked solid. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out my Polaroid, and snapped a picture, an old habit. Proof of weird moments. Something to anchor reality. The photo developed slowly in my hand. I watched the colors bleed into shape. When it cleared, it showed me standing at the pump outside. But my face wasn't right. I was smiling. And I hadn't been. I looked up. The store was empty now. Tim was gone. The counter was dusted with fine white powder, like it hadn't been touched in years. Behind me, a faint click. Like a camera shutter. I turned. No one. The clock was ticking forward again. I looked down at the photo. In the background, through the glass, was someone watching from the inside. Wearing my jacket. Holding my camera. I dropped the photo. It fluttered to the tile, landing face up. I didn't pick it up. Just stared at the reflection in the fridge door. It blinked again. But I didn't. I don't remember walking away from the fridge, but somehow I was back near the front of the store. My palms were damp. The lights overhead buzzed faintly, like something far away vibrating through the walls. The air didn't smell right anymore, less like bleach, more like something metallic left in the sun. I bent down, half expecting the photo I dropped to be gone. It was still there, curling slightly at the edges. I didn't touch it. Instead, I stepped over it. The shelves looked more organized than before. Labels all facing forward. Every item lined up perfectly, as if no one had ever touched them. I paused at a row of canned soup, each label stamped 1992, yet none looked dusty. I checked the expiration date on one just to be sure. May 2000. I wasn't sure what unsettled me more, that it was expired, or that it hadn't aged a day. Behind me, something thudded faintly. I turned. Nothing had moved. No music played. No announcements. But the silence had texture, like cotton shoved too deep into your ears. I walked slowly past the fridge. Still full. The milk jugs hadn't changed. Neither had the little tubs of butter. Except now, one of them had writing on the lid. Not printed, handwritten. A black marker, slanted cursive. Did you see it blink? I closed the fridge. The lights flickered once. Just once. Enough to make me stop moving. There was no cashier now. No Tim. The counter was exactly as I'd last seen it, untouched, dust-covered, silent. I walked up to it, hoping to find a phone, a register, anything that might act like a tether to normalcy. A single item sat on the counter, a postcard. The front showed a red desert with spiny yucca trees and cracked sand. Something you'd pick up in a gift shop near the Grand Canyon. Except the caption said "Wish you were still here," not "Wish you were here." That extra word stopped me. I flipped it over. No address. No stamp. But the handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's. "Caleb, you always drive too far without stopping. Come back inside. The coffee's getting cold." She'd been dead 7 years. I stared at the message until the loops in her C and F blurred together. The card was clean. Crisp. No dust. No creases. I hadn't seen that handwriting since the hospice nurse gave me her last letter. I placed it back on the counter, carefully, like it might tear if I breathed too hard. Behind me, something ticked. I turned. The wall clock ticked forward, then stopped. 1 second. Then back. Then forward again. The tick was louder than it should have been. Each sound landed like a pebble in water, rippling. I stepped toward it. But with each step, the air felt thicker, like moving through something invisible. My legs weren't heavy, but the space between me and the clock seemed to stretch. I paused and looked down. I was standing on another photo. Different from the first. This one showed the store from above, like a drone shot, only I was in it, facing the shelves, frozen mid-step. I don't own a drone. I never have. I reached for it, but my fingers twitched halfway down. I left it. Instead, I moved toward the far aisle, the one I hadn't walked through yet. It was narrower. Cooler. The ceiling lights dimmer. The products weren't food. They were toys. All from the early 90s, plastic figures, boxed puzzles, even a Viewmaster in faded packaging. My fingers hovered over the glass case holding them. The Viewmaster clicked inside the box. No one touched it. No batteries. Just one quiet, unmistakable click. I backed away. The floor under my feet felt, not soft, but less stable. I stepped again. There was a muffled crunch. I looked down. Another postcard. This one was older. Yellowed, torn at the edges. The message was simple. Still here. Can't leave. Something's wrong with the road. It wasn't signed. I left it where it was. I turned the corner of the aisle and found the bathroom door. Or at least, a door. Plain, white, with a handle that looked newer than everything else. A small sign read "Employees Only." I didn't hesitate. Something about that phrase felt like a test. I opened it. Inside was not a room. It was the parking lot. Same desert. Same sky. Same heat. But my truck was gone. The pump was still there. The ground looked untouched. The road stretched in both directions, unchanged. But no vehicle. No tire marks. I stepped out. The heat hit hard. Real. Dry. The building behind me was no longer a gas station. It looked like a house now. Not one I recognized, but it felt familiar. 2 stories. Tan siding. Red shingles. A porch swing moved slightly, though there was no wind. I turned back to where the door should have been. It was gone. Just the wall of a house now. No sign it had ever opened. I stood in the dirt, my boots sinking slightly into the warm, shifting sand. The sun hadn't moved. Still hung at that same unnatural angle. High, but casting no strong shadows. Then I heard the radio. Faint. Not music, just static, rising and falling like breath. I followed the sound, rounding the corner of the house. A small radio sat on the porch, old-fashioned, the kind with 2 dials and a frayed cord running inside. The static deepened. A whisper filtered through, female, distant, almost gentle. Caleb. I stopped breathing. Caleb, come back inside. Not loud. Not urgent. Just familiar. I stared at the radio until it went quiet. No click. No fade. Just silence. I sat down on the porch steps. Tried to light another cigarette, but my hands wouldn't steady. I looked at the sky. It hadn't changed. Still that pale yellow, too bright, too dull at once. The air didn't feel like Nevada anymore. Didn't feel like Earth. Just wrong. The porch creaked behind me. I didn't turn around. I just closed my eyes and listened for another voice. None came. Only the wind, and even that didn't feel real. I sat on the porch until the sun began to sting. Not burn, sting, like salt on skin. My cigarette had gone out halfway through. I didn't relight it. The lighter felt cold in my hand, like it had come from somewhere colder than the desert. The house behind me was silent. Not a floorboard creak. Not a hum from the walls. Just stillness, like a photograph someone had forgotten to look at. I stood. My legs ached, not from sitting too long, but from standing still too long in too many places. There was nothing around the house. No trees. No fence. Not even tire marks in the dust. I walked toward the road, hoping it would act like a magnet, pull me back into something familiar. But the moment I stepped past the corner of the porch, I stopped. The gas station was back. Not the house. Not the porch. Just the pale yellow walls, the single pump, and the same warped window I'd leaned against what felt like hours ago. Only now, the pump handle was hanging loose, swinging slightly, as if it had just been dropped. I checked my pockets. The Polaroid was still there. But the photograph had changed. I didn't take it out. I didn't want to know what it showed now. Inside the station, the lights were on. I hadn't seen them come on. There was no decision, no moment where I said, I'm going in. 1 second I was outside, the next I was between the shelves again. The air smelled the same, bleach and metal, but heavier now. Like it had settled into the walls. A sound played faintly overhead. Not music. More like distant laughter, looped and reversed, just quiet enough to pass as a faulty fan. I walked back to the counter. The postcard was gone. So was the dust. Everything was clean again. And then I saw myself. In the fridge door, same spot as before, same jacket. But this time I wasn't blinking. I was smiling. A slow, unnatural curve that didn't reach my eyes. I stepped left. The reflection didn't move. I backed away. The cooler door opened by itself with a soft hiss. Inside, where the milk had been, was a single photograph. Not a Polaroid. Glossy. Developed. I pulled it out carefully. It showed me standing behind the counter. Wearing the brown uniform. Wearing the name tag, Tim. I dropped it. It didn't fall. It fluttered sideways and landed upright against the shelf, like something had set it down gently midair. Behind me, the radio crackled. Still here, the voice whispered. You're almost done. I turned toward the sound. No radio in sight. Then I noticed something else. The clock on the wall wasn't ticking anymore. It was counting down. No numbers, just the hands spinning faster and faster in reverse. The second hand melted into a blur. I stepped closer. The tick-tick-tick had become a hum, almost a vibration in my chest. I touched the glass. It was warm. And then I saw it, barely visible, my own face behind the glass, as if the clock were a window and I was standing inside it, staring out. I stepped back. The hum stopped. The lights overhead flickered, one by one, toward the back of the store. Like a trail. I didn't want to follow, but I couldn't stand still. Each step felt like walking into something denser than air. Not resistance. Just heaviness. The kind you feel in hospitals. The kind that builds behind your eyes during certain silences. At the back of the store, where the toys had been, was now a door. Not the employee one. A different one. Wooden. Faded green. No sign, no knob. Just a thin line of dark under the frame. I pressed my ear against it. No sound. I pushed. It opened inward with a sigh, like it had been waiting. Inside, darkness. But not black. Charcoal. Deep enough to feel, not just see. It didn't feel empty. It felt full of something not meant to be touched. I stepped through. I was in a hallway. Narrow. Walls lined with mirrors. Each reflected a version of me. Not younger. Not older. Just slightly off. In one, I was missing my watch. In another, my jacket patch was torn. In the last mirror, my eyes weren't mine. They were Tim's, one hazel, one brown. I didn't stop walking. The hallway curved slowly, like a spiral. And then I was back at the counter. No mirrors. No door behind me. Just the store. The exact same layout. Same shelves. Same hum. But the light was too bright now. Not fluorescent, sunlight. Direct. Harsh. From no clear source. I walked toward the front, toward the glass. My truck was back. So was the road. But I couldn't tell if it was the same road or a copy. I stepped outside. The heat felt normal again. Dry. Crisp. Familiar. I touched the truck's door. It was warm. I climbed in. Turned the key. The engine started. The gas tank read full. The Polaroid was gone. So was the photograph. The radio turned on by itself. Static. Then, a voice. You made it out. I waited. Then the voice added. For now. I turned the volume down. Pulled onto the road. Didn't look back. But sometimes, when I'm driving at night, the dashboard light flickers for no reason. Sometimes, I find postcards on the passenger seat. No stamp. My mother's handwriting. Sometimes, when I pass a gas station on an empty road, I glance at the pump and see myself already standing there. And sometimes, when I sleep too close to the edge of the desert, I wake up with sand in my boots and a photo in my pocket. Always the same one. Me, behind the counter. Smiling. The smile never feels like mine, but it fits better every time. Story 2, the passenger window stared back. I'd driven that stretch of Colorado road a dozen times. At least, I thought I had. The pine trees always pressed in close, the mountains teasing the edges of the skyline. I liked that feeling, being between things. Between sky and ground, forest and road, here and there. It was quiet in the way I needed. Not lonely, exactly. Just quiet enough to keep the noise inside from getting too loud. The fog had rolled in just past 4. Thin at first, like breath on glass. Then thicker, weightier. I didn't worry. I kept the music low, old piano tracks from a playlist I'd made during the breakup. I didn't cry to them anymore, just let them fill the silence. My GPS flickered once around mile marker 67. Then the screen froze. No signal, it said. I tapped it. Nothing changed. I knew I should have printed the directions, but it hadn't felt necessary. I recognized the trees, the dips in the road, the little wooden mile signs with faded paint. Or I thought I did. I didn't pass a single car for over an hour. The heater blew lukewarm air, just enough to keep the windshield clear. I leaned forward to look up at the curve ahead. The fog made everything seem closer than it was, like the road might end just around the next bend and drop off into nothing. That's when I noticed the passenger window. Not the seat, just the window. It was reflecting the trees, but slightly out of sync. A half second behind the movement. Like a live feed lagging. I blinked. Looked away. Then back. The delay was gone. It could have been the fog. I told myself that. Still, I adjusted the side mirror, then wiped the inside of the glass with my sleeve. It didn't help. The fog wasn't outside the car anymore, it was inside the reflection. The further I drove, the more it felt like the car was quieter than before. Not just in sound, but in presence. Like I was moving through a place that had nothing to echo back at me. I cleared my throat. Just to hear something. Nothing echoed. The radio fizzled once, then went completely silent. No static. Just off. I checked the knobs. Everything looked normal. The volume was turned halfway up, but no sound came through. A curve in the road brought me closer to the trees. Branches hung lower than they had before. One of them tapped the roof gently, like fingers across a table. I slowed down. The tires crunched over damp leaves. Something moved in the passenger side mirror. A flicker. A shift. I turned to look at the seat beside me. Empty. Just my backpack. My jacket rolled into a lump. Nothing else. I looked back at the window. There it was again. A faint shape. Not in the seat. In the glass. Not me. Just a shoulder, maybe. Barely there. Like someone sitting beside me who didn't want to be seen, only reflected. My hands tightened on the wheel. I didn't stop the car. I didn't even slow down. I told myself the reflection was catching the trees, or maybe a shadow from the back seat. I adjusted the rearview mirror, angling it toward the back. Nothing there. Just the empty bench seat and my thermos rolling quietly in the floor well. The GPS blinked back on. Recalculating. Then. Turn left. There was no road. I kept driving. It chirped again. In 200 feet, turn left. Still no road. Just fog and pines in the hollow space where mountains should have been. I turned the GPS off. Didn't need it telling me where not to go. I turned the music back on, just for company. Nothing played. The display showed the track name, something about Winter Light, but no sound. I reached over and tapped it. Still nothing. Then the reflection in the passenger window turned to look at me. Not fast. Not sudden. Just a slow tilt of the head. Slightly angled. The seat was still empty. I looked straight at it. Nothing. But when I looked at the glass again, I saw it. A faint outline. Facing me now. My throat felt dry. I rolled the window down. The reflection disappeared. Cool air hit my face. Smelled like pine and damp wood. I rolled it back up slowly. Clear glass. No fog. No reflection. I kept driving. Minutes passed. Or hours. I came to a split in the road. I didn't recognize either direction. No signs. Just two identical paths winding deeper into gray. I stopped the car. That's when I heard it. A voice. Faint. From the back seat. Not loud. Not threatening. Just there. You always say that, it said. Then forget. I didn't turn around. My chest was tight. My legs wouldn't move. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went pale. The fog thickened outside. I shifted the car into reverse. The engine stalled. Silence. I took a breath. Held it. Turned the key again. It started. I didn't speak. I didn't check the mirrors. I just chose the left path and drove. Didn't matter where it led. Somewhere behind me, the thermos rolled forward and bumped the back of my seat. And somewhere, faint and distant, a voice whispered. You picked the wrong road again. The left road narrowed the deeper I drove. The trees leaned in, taller, older, their branches draping over the pavement like curtains. At times, I thought I saw bark moving slightly, breathing with the wind, but I couldn't hear any wind. The fog kept pace with me. Not ahead, not behind, just on either side, like a tunnel I was being guided through. Even with the headlights on low beam, visibility was shrinking. I slowed down to a crawl. The kind of speed where even a squirrel crossing the road would cause a full stop. I didn't feel lost, not exactly. More like removed. Like whatever road I was on had peeled off the rest of the map, like a sticker someone half lifted and forgot to re-stick. The radio screen still displayed the name of the last song. Still no sound. I cracked the window slightly, hoping the air might wake me up. The chill helped. It smelled like wet bark and cold metal. Familiar, in a vague, unpleasant way. The road curved again, longer this time. I noticed something odd. The trees on the left were mirrored on the right, exactly. Same crooked trunks, same missing branches, same dark notches in the bark. Not similar, identical. I slowed even more. It wasn't a loop. The road kept changing direction. But the surroundings, they hadn't. Not naturally. I didn't speak aloud. I didn't want my voice to sound out of place in a space where nothing else was speaking. Instead, I glanced at the rearview mirror. My back seat was empty. Just the rolled jacket, the thermos, and 2 granola wrappers from the morning. Still, I stared longer than I meant to. The reflection felt delayed. Like it was thinking. I adjusted the angle of the mirror, just slightly. Now, the back seat was fine. Normal. But for a moment, I'd seen something else. Not a shape. Not a person. Just a difference. A small flicker of light that shouldn't have been there. Like someone had exhaled against the mirror's surface and left no breath behind. I reached back blindly, hand brushing the jacket, the seat belt. Nothing strange. Nothing out of place. I turned my attention forward again. The road was narrowing more, now barely wide enough for one vehicle. I told myself I'd turn around once I found a place to pull over. A mile later, there still wasn't one. The trees had begun to shift colors, not fall colors, but slightly off shades of what they were supposed to be. Needles too blue. Bark that looked dark gray, almost reflective. The fog had a weight now. Not physical, mental. Like it pressed on memory, not skin. The GPS stayed off. My phone had no bars. I turned on the cabin light for a second, just to check my reflection in the rearview again. My face looked pale. Tired. But something in the angle of my head felt wrong, like I was leaning a little too far to one side, though I wasn't. Then the mirror adjusted itself. Just a twitch. Just enough to realign to my eyes. I shut the cabin light off. I didn't look at it again for a while. At the next bend, a wooden sign appeared by the road. Unpainted, nailed into the trunk of a pine that bent toward the asphalt. The message carved into it was shallow but clear. Don't look back. No mileage. No directions. No arrow. I drove past it. Slower. 100 feet later, another sign. Same carving. Don't look back. I gripped the wheel tighter. My mouth was dry. A third sign, barely hanging. Stay forward. I didn't stop the car. I didn't turn around. But I glanced, just for a second, into the rearview. My face was still there. But it wasn't watching the road. It was staring into the mirror. Right at me. No movement. No change in expression. Just stillness. I looked away. I turned the mirror downward so it faced the dashboard. That helped. For a few minutes. The forest grew darker. Or maybe the sun dipped behind something. There was no way to tell the time anymore. I pulled over when the road widened briefly into a gravel patch. Probably once used for maintenance or snow chains. I left the engine running. My legs ached from tension. My hands had grooves from where the steering wheel had pressed into my skin too long. I thought about stepping out, just to breathe something that wasn't cabin filtered. But I stayed seated. I tilted the mirror back up. I don't know why. And this time, I wasn't in it. Not fully. My reflection was off-center. The face was mine, yes, but the posture was wrong. The chin too low. The shoulders more square. The mouth set in an expression I didn't feel. Like a version of myself playing stillness poorly. I watched for a long moment. Then the mouth in the mirror moved. Just slightly. It didn't speak. It mouthed something. I couldn't hear it. I didn't want to understand it. But I did. One word. Trade. I shifted the mirror back down. Sat in the silence. Outside, the fog began to clear, not fully, but just enough for the trees ahead to stretch tall and lean. I pressed the gas gently. Back on the road. The tires crunched gravel, then eased onto pavement again. I didn't check the mirror anymore. But the cold feeling in my chest stayed. Not fear. Anticipation. The road evened out just past a cluster of leaning pines, the kind that grow close together and block out most of the light. I kept the car steady, one hand on the wheel, the other resting flat on my thigh. I didn't touch the mirror again. Something about the last time had made me feel observed. The fog hadn't lifted, exactly, but it thinned into strands, like it had been pulled apart. Beyond the windshield, the world looked more like a photograph now. Still. Overexposed. Even the trees had stopped moving. For the first time in hours, or maybe longer, the GPS blinked back to life. Just a white screen. No map. No words. Then, slowly, a single icon appeared, a dot. It pulsed. Then the text, "You are here." No road. No direction. No waypoints. Just here. I didn't touch it. I kept driving. The forest thinned. The trees on the right fell away to an open clearing, flat and pale like dried grass in winter. A barn stood in the middle. Weathered wood, roof caved slightly on one side. I hadn't seen any signs for towns, farms, or side roads. But there it was. A single floodlight buzzed over the barn door, even though I couldn't see any power lines. I didn't stop. Out of the corner of my eye, something in the passenger window shifted. I looked. Not directly. Just enough to catch a movement. My own reflection. But the mouth was open. Not gasping. Just parted slightly. Breathing, maybe. Waiting. I turned away. Checked the road again. The GPS now showed a second dot. No labels. Just a quiet, slow approach. It was moving toward me. I tapped the screen. It didn't respond. The temperature dropped inside the car. The heater still hummed, but it wasn't helping. I rubbed my arms and pressed my palm against the vent. Cold air blew steadily, as if the car had forgotten how to warm anything. I slowed to a near stop and finally dared a glance at the passenger seat. Empty. Same rolled-up jacket. Same indentation in the cushion from the pack. But when I looked at the window, the reflection showed something else. A second figure. No features. Just a silhouette, barely darker than the glass itself. Like someone outside the car, pressing close from the other side. I rolled the window down slightly. Nothing there. Just fog and trees. I rolled it back up. Now the seat looked disturbed, creased as if someone had shifted slightly. I didn't remember hitting a bump. The GPS beeped. The two dots had merged. The screen faded to black. I turned it off. The radio clicked on without warning. Not music. Not static. My voice. I told you already, I'm not going back there. It was me, but I hadn't said that. Not today. Not recently. The recording played faintly, like it had been taped in secret. There were long pauses, shuffling sounds, and then laughter, also mine. Low, tired, humorless. Then silence. Then, a new voice. Not recorded. From the passenger seat. Almost there. I froze. Didn't look. Didn't blink. The words had no weight, no emotion. Like someone practicing speech. The road bent left, then right, and opened into a wide clearing. My headlights fell on a road sign, metal, dented, speckled with rust. End of route. No numbers. No town name. Just that. The road didn't end. It kept going, straight and smooth. But the sign said it did. I passed it anyway. The car hesitated, a small hiccup in the acceleration, like it had stepped over something it couldn't quite see. The forest on either side vanished. Now it was just road and fog. Sky above, flat and gray. Ground below, the same dull asphalt. The mirror, angled low, still reflected the dash. But from the edge of the glass, something moved into view. A hand. Slow. Deliberate. It rested on the center console, fingers curled slightly inward. Not my hand. Not connected to anything. I didn't look over. The fingers twitched. Then stilled. The air inside the car felt thick, like breathing underwater. I took a slow inhale, kept my eyes on the horizon, and whispered, not loudly. Why now? No reply. But the hand withdrew, like it had been waiting for permission to leave. The radio crackled again. You were always coming back. I turned it off. The road finally curved one last time. And then I saw my car. Parked on the side. Engine off. Windows fogged from the inside. Exact make. Exact model. Same dent near the back bumper. Same license plate. I passed it without slowing. Didn't stop to check. Didn't want to see who, or what, was inside. But in the passenger window reflection, I saw myself sitting behind the wheel. Only, in the reflection, I wasn't driving. I was staring back. Expressionless. Still. Like I had already arrived. Final line. I don't remember taking my hands off the wheel, but the road kept going, and the reflection smiled back. Story 3. I slept at a rest stop that doesn't exist anymore. I pulled into the rest stop a little past 2:30 a.m., just outside Pecos. The highway had stretched too long and too flat, the white lines blurring into a rhythm that made my eyelids heavier than I liked. I'd told myself I'd push onto Odessa, maybe grab a coffee there, but my vision had started to tilt around the edges. It was the kind of fatigue that doesn't tap your shoulder, it just quietly starts undoing you. The rest area sat alone off a wide shoulder, surrounded by chain-link fencing that looked half-installed. A few orange cones lay tipped over along the lot, like someone meant to block off a section but forgot to finish. 2 yellow picnic tables, their paint cracked and flaking, sat under a sagging metal awning. A single street lamp cast light across the gravel, humming quietly in that way old lights do when the ballast is going bad. I parked near the edge, next to one of those short concrete bumpers with grass poking through the cracks. The moving truck hissed as it settled, the engine ticking as it cooled. I let the silence settle in. It was warm, dry warmth, the kind that seeps through your clothes without sweat. My CB radio was unplugged, phone battery low, and I didn't feel like scrolling through anything. The cabin smelled faintly of cardboard and stale energy drinks. I reached for the composition notebook in the glove box, the one I used to scribble down odd things on long trips. Sometimes towns I pass. Sometimes strange billboards. Just a way to keep track of the in-between moments. I wrote one line. 2:39 a.m., Pecos rest stop. Yellow benches. Too quiet. Then I closed the book. I stretched my arms, reclined the seat just enough, and closed my eyes. No intention of sleeping long. Just a quick reset. 20 minutes, tops. The next thing I remember, my phone buzzed. 3:04 a.m. I sat up. Blinked. The truck felt colder. My throat was dry. Outside, nothing had changed. Same dim light, same cracked pavement, same hum from the street lamp. Except there was a car now. Silver sedan, parked 4 spots down. No lights. Engine off. I hadn't heard it pull in. I watched it for a while. No movement. Eventually, I got out. Stretched. Rolled my shoulders. The air felt thicker than before, not quite humid, just heavier. I walked toward the vending machines under the awning. One was busted, glass cracked across the top. The other still lit, buttons faded and sticky. I pressed for water. The machine rattled, hesitated, then dropped a bottle with a thunk that echoed too loudly in the stillness. That's when I heard it. Humming. Low. Soft. Female. Not a tune I recognized. I turned, expecting to see someone near the sedan. No one there. The humming stopped. I walked a slow circle around the lot. No footprints. No noise. Just wind pushing faintly at the chain link, making it clink in irregular taps. Back at the truck, I drank half the water and sat on the edge of the bumper. From here, the vending machine's light flickered slightly, too rhythmic to be random, too irregular to be designed. I stared at the yellow picnic tables. The paint flaked in long curls, like sunburnt skin. One of the tables had initials carved deep into the wood. I couldn't make them out from here. I told myself I'd sit 5 more minutes, then keep driving. When I opened the truck door, the CB radio turned on. Just static. It shouldn't have powered on. It was unplugged. I stared at the cord. Still wrapped. Still tucked behind the dash. I reached over and shut the unit off. The static continued for 2 full seconds after the button clicked. Then silence. I started the truck. The engine turned, slower than usual. A long grind, then ignition. 3:04 a.m. Still. I checked my phone again. Same time. I turned it off. Just drive, I told myself. I put the truck in gear, eased forward. The headlights swept across the lot. The sedan was gone. No taillights. No dust. No sound. Gone. But I hadn't looked away for more than a few seconds. I coasted to the exit of the lot. Rolled to a stop. I looked in the side mirror. The sedan was parked again. Same spot. Same angle. My hands didn't move. I let the truck idle. The street lamp buzzed overhead. The vending machine hummed. And somewhere behind me, the humming started again. Same tune. Same soft voice. Only now it was closer. I turned off the truck. Stepped out slowly. Walked around the back. Nothing there. No footprints. I looked toward the vending machines. The water bottle I'd left on the bumper was gone. I checked the trash. Empty. Back inside the cab, I flipped open the notebook to my last entry. Blank. No writing. I turned the pages. All empty. No scribbles. No towns. No notes from previous trips. Just clean lines. As if I'd never written in it at all. The clock on the dash blinked once. 2:39 a.m. Again. I didn't sleep. I just sat there. Let the truck idle. Waited for something to explain itself. It never did. By 3:30 a.m., I stopped pretending I was going to leave. I'd turn the key 3 times. Let the engine rumble. Put my hand on the gear shift. But nothing in me moved forward. The road ahead felt thinner than it should have. Hollow, somehow. Like stepping onto it would mean agreeing to something I didn't understand. So I stayed. The notebook remained on the passenger seat, still blank. I flipped through it again, page by page. Even the cover looked newer, like it had never been used. I scratched my thumbnail along the inside spine where I usually doodled phone numbers or grocery lists. Clean. Too clean. I set it down and leaned back. The driver's seat creaked a little as it reclined, familiar and worn in. I closed my eyes for maybe a minute. No more. When I opened them, the vending machine light was off. I didn't hear it click. Didn't see it flicker. Just, out. The rest of the lot looked the same, lamp buzzing, gravel still, fence leaning, but that little square of brightness was gone. It made the awning above the yellow picnic tables look darker. Heavier. I stared at the machine, waiting for the light to blink back on. Nothing. Then someone stepped into view. A woman. She stood in front of the machine like she'd been there the whole time. Hands in her coat pockets, hair down over her shoulders, a gray hoodie pulled up around her neck. She didn't move much. Just tilted her head, slowly, as if deciding what to choose, though the machine was clearly off. I rolled down the window halfway. The air smelled like damp concrete. No wind. She pressed a button. The machine didn't react. She did it again. Same button. Same pause. Then, without turning, she said something I almost didn't catch. "You dropped your water." My mouth went dry. I hadn't seen her pick it up. Hadn't even seen her near the truck. And the way she said it, it wasn't a question. It was like reciting a line. I didn't answer. Just watched. She stepped back from the machine, turned toward the picnic table, and sat down. Same table as before, the one with the initials carved deep into the wood. She faced forward, toward the lot, not toward me. I checked the dashboard clock. 2:39 a.m. Again. I blinked hard. Looked at my phone. Dead. It had been at 12% earlier. Now black. No warning. I turned the key, just enough to light up the dash. 2:39. The truck hadn't moved. The fuel gauge hadn't dropped. The temperature was the same. I stepped out. Slowly. The gravel shifted under my boots with that dry, cracking sound, like stepping on stale cereal. The woman didn't turn. I walked halfway to the vending machines. Then stopped. From here, I could see the machine had no reflection in the glass. Just black space. The hum was gone too. She finally spoke again. Still not looking at me. "It's easier if you stop trying to measure it." Her voice was calm. Not monotone, not robotic, just flat. Like she'd said it before. Like it wasn't meant for me specifically, but for anyone who'd made it this far. I cleared my throat. "You work here?" She smiled, faintly. I only saw it in the curve of her cheek. "No one works here." Then, quieter. "Not anymore." I looked around the lot. Still empty, aside from my truck and her. No signage. No trash bins. The fence at the back sagged a little more now, as if time itself had leaned into it. I approached the table slowly. The initials carved into the wood were fresh. Deep grooves. Sharp. Like someone had done it recently. J.O., my initials. I hadn't carved them. She finally turned toward me. Her eyes didn't narrow. No emotion. "You've been here a while," she said. I shook my head. 20 minutes. Maybe 30. Her lips barely moved. "It starts that way." I sat down across from her. The table wobbled slightly. "How long have you been here?" She tilted her head again, slower this time. "Long enough to forget what leaving feels like." That line stayed in the air longer than it should have. I wanted to ask more. But I couldn't think of a question that didn't sound wrong. Instead, I reached for the notebook in my pocket. Flipped to the first page. Still blank. She leaned forward, not touching it. Just watching. "Try writing something," she said. I hesitated, then scrawled a single line. 3:46 a.m., talked to woman at picnic table. She nodded. "Now wait." I waited. 10 seconds. 20. Then the ink faded. Letter by letter. Gone. The page looked untouched again. She didn't react. "Sometimes it lets you keep a sentence," she said. "But not the important ones." I stared at her. "What is this place?" She shook her head slowly, as if not at me, but at the idea of the question. "It's a stop. That's all." I stood up. Needed to feel something under my feet. The vending machine light flicked back on. Same low hum. She didn't look at it. I turned toward my truck. Still parked. Still warm. I walked to it. Got in. Shut the door. The CB radio was on again. Only static. But beneath it, barely audible, a voice whispered. "You dropped your water." I didn't look back at the picnic table. I didn't turn on the headlights. I just sat there, watching the time blink. 2:39 a.m. Over and over. Like the beginning of something I couldn't see the end of. I woke up with my hands still on the steering wheel. The engine was running. The headlights were on. The cab smelled faintly of diesel and something sweet, something that didn't belong. Like vanilla, but off. My eyes felt dry, like I'd been staring too long. I blinked slowly. The lot outside looked unchanged. Same leaning fences. Same yellow picnic tables under that quiet canopy. Same vending machines humming softly, one flickering, the other too still. The woman was gone. The seat where she'd sat was empty again. The vending machine's light blinked twice and steadied. I hadn't remembered falling asleep. I checked the dash. 2:39 a.m. Again. I turned off the engine. Rolled down the window a few inches. The air was cool but stale. Like the space around me had been sealed shut long before I got there. I sat without moving for a while, just watching the outlines of the lot shift slightly in the wind. There were no tire marks near my truck. None behind. None ahead. I stepped out and looked down at the gravel. The dust beneath the tires hadn't shifted. It was undisturbed. Like I'd never arrived. Or had been parked much longer than I remembered. I walked around the truck slowly. The hood was warm. The undercarriage ticked faintly as metal cooled. But the license plate looked new. Like it had been replaced. Same number. Just cleaner than it should have been. I turned back toward the tables. A new figure stood near the vending machine. Tall. Broad shoulders. Hooded sweatshirt. Head down. He pressed a button. The machine didn't react. Pressed it again. Then again. I stayed near the truck, arms crossed. He turned slightly. Didn't face me, just shifted. From this angle, I could see the passenger side window of my truck. In the glass, the man was looking right at me. But his body was still angled away. I stepped closer to the vending machines, boots crunching softly across the gravel. The man didn't move. The reflection in the truck window didn't either. He said nothing. Just stood there, one hand against the glass. Then he walked toward the tables and sat at the same bench the woman had used. Head lowered, elbows on knees. I looked away from him and back at my truck. Now the passenger door was open. Just a crack. Wide enough to notice. I hadn't opened it. Inside, the notebook was gone. I climbed into the cab and checked the floor, the dashboard, the glove box. Empty. Even the old receipts I kept shoved near the air vent were missing. The CB radio was on. But not playing static. This time, it was playing my voice. Muffled. As if recorded through cloth. I'm not sure I ever left. Maybe I'm still driving. I shut it off. Held the dial for a few seconds longer than necessary. Outside, the man had disappeared. The table was empty again. I stepped back out. Walked to where he'd been sitting. There, on the wood, next to the carved initials, was the notebook. Open to a page I hadn't written. In someone else's handwriting. You were never driving. You've just been watching yourself leave. Below that, one word. Trade? I closed the book and held it tightly. Walked back toward the truck. The passenger door was wide open now. Inside, the seat belt had been pulled across and clipped in. As if someone was sitting there. I didn't reach for it. I didn't say anything. I just sat back in the driver's seat and shut the door. I turned the key. The engine started. Smooth. Too smooth. The headlights flicked on. The road ahead looked straight again. I didn't look at the picnic tables. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. Just held the wheel and let the truck roll forward. The tires finally left tracks. I passed the fence. The entrance behind me vanished in the mirror. But the passenger seat still felt occupied. I kept my eyes forward. I didn't need to check. I knew something was sitting beside me. Just watching. I stopped for gas 2 hours later at a station near Midland. Bright lights. Music playing. People moving normally. The girl behind the counter asked how long I'd been on the road. I opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't remember. I pulled out the notebook, flipped to the first page. Only one line was written. Left the rest stop at 2:39 a.m. No date. No year. Nothing else. Final. Sometimes, when I check the mirrors, I see myself behind the wheel, just a second before I actually turn. Story 4, I followed the wrong car for miles, and now I can't find my own. The road out of Evanston was mostly empty. I-80 eastbound, mid-morning, late February. Dry skies, frost hugging the edges of the pavement, and a dull white sun that never quite warmed the windshield. I was heading home to Nebraska after 3 nights with my brother. It wasn't a long trip, but the kind of drive where silence gets into your head. The Corolla hummed steadily, tires hissing over old snow. I had my usual route printed out on the passenger seat, just in case. The GPS worked fine, but I liked having something paper-based. Something unchanging. The mirror was still scratched from a delivery truck that clipped me outside Laramie last year. Every time I caught the mark in passing light, I told myself I'd get it fixed. I never did. I wasn't in a rush. No work waiting. No calls to make. I had music playing, nothing specific, just a playlist I'd used on longer drives. The 5th track started twice. I didn't notice at first. It was a slow piano piece, and when it began again, I thought maybe I'd missed something. But when I checked the screen, the song had already played through. Now it had started again. I skipped ahead. Nothing strange. Just one of those small glitches. A few miles later, I noticed the car. Gray Corolla, same year, maybe the same model. 2 vehicles ahead in the right lane. Same dull factory color. Same slight tilt in the rear tire alignment. It could have been anyone's. But when it changed lanes, I saw the dent, rear driver's side, low and narrow, exactly like mine. Same placement. Same depth. I leaned forward. It wasn't just the dent. There was a faded bumper sticker above it, half peeled, the kind that came with the car when I bought it used. An old university logo. One I'd never removed. And this one had it. Exactly. I checked my rear view. My car. The same. I looked again at the car ahead. Same. It stayed a steady 2 car lengths in front of me. Didn't speed up. Didn't fall back. It held the lane like it had been there the whole time, like I was the one catching up to something I'd left behind. I adjusted in my seat. My hands felt clammy on the wheel. After another few miles, the car took the next exit, an unmarked ramp I didn't remember seeing on the printed directions. No sign. Just a narrow offshoot veering toward a treeless stretch of land. I should have kept driving. But I didn't. I followed. The ramp dropped into a flat access road, uneven and pitted with frost heave. The Corolla ahead took a right at a fork, and I stayed close, slowing as the road narrowed. We passed a boarded-up way station, an old fence curling with rust. Then, suddenly, the other car turned into a gravel lot and stopped. I passed it. Didn't mean to. There was no sign, no pull to turn myself. But as I looked back, the car had disappeared. No dust trail. No brake lights. Gone. The road bent slowly around a ridge, and when I came out the other side, I was back on the highway. No merge sign, no on-ramp, just a long stretch of I-80 again, clean and unbroken. The GPS recalculated. I checked my side mirror. The scratch was gone. I pulled into the right lane and slowed to a steady cruise. My hands felt heavier now, the steering wheel smoother than I remembered. At the next rest area sign, I turned off. The lot was mostly empty, 2 trucks idling at the far end, a single SUV parked near the vending machines. I took a space near the middle, turned off the engine, and sat for a moment, watching my windshield cloud slightly from the inside. I reached across to grab the printed route from the seat, but it wasn't there. No papers. No wrapper from the sandwich I'd eaten earlier. No receipt from the gas station just outside Rock Springs. Passenger seat was clean. Neatly clean. I opened the glove box. Inside was a small stack of maps. Not mine. Folded differently. Dates too recent. And a registration slip I didn't recognize. Different name. Same license plate. I stepped out and circled the car. The dent was missing. So was the bumper sticker. Back seat, no blanket. No tote bag. No jacket with my name stitched in the collar. Inside, the music player still ran, but the songs were unfamiliar. My playlist had been replaced with something softer, slower. Like a lullaby in a language I didn't know. I opened my wallet. Driver's license, my face, wrong name. Same address. But it felt like a version printed slightly off-center, like something pretending to be official but not quite matching. I got back in the car. Turned on the ignition. The dashboard lights blinked, then steadied. 12:21 p.m. I didn't remember it being that late. Outside, a woman fed something into the vending machine. Her reflection in the glass stared longer than it should have before she turned away. I pulled out of the lot. Merged back onto the highway. The road looked the same. Mile markers passed in perfect intervals. The sky hadn't changed. But when I glanced into the mirror again, the scratch had returned. Only now, it was on the passenger side. Final line. The more I drive, the more the car remembers things I don't, and forgets what I do. I kept the windows cracked after the rest stop. Just enough to let in some air that didn't smell like plastic or old upholstery. Wyoming stretched out on both sides, flat, frozen, and empty. The sun hovered above the horizon line, soft and pale, like it wasn't fully awake. I drove slower than usual. There wasn't any reason for it. The speed limit was high, and the road was clear. But something about the way the tires moved against the pavement felt too smooth. Almost rehearsed. The radio stayed on. I didn't remember turning it up, but the volume had risen. Barely noticeable at first, background kind of soft, but now the speakers carried more weight. The music wasn't mine. It wasn't from my phone, either. I checked the screen. No Bluetooth connection. No USB plugged in. Just AUX unknown written in gray text. The song playing was something slow and orchestral. Strings. No melody I recognized. It didn't loop. Just went on, shifting slightly, as if avoiding repetition without ever reaching a chorus. I turned the volume down. It rose again a few minutes later. Not all at once. Just gradually, like someone adjusting the knob with practiced subtlety. I hit the power button. The screen flickered. The sound stayed. I left it alone. Ahead, a blue sign promised gas and food in 12 miles. I thought about stopping. Thought about asking someone to check the plates. Maybe look at my registration. Confirm something I could hold on to. But I kept driving. I passed another sign. Then another. All showed the same distance. 12 miles. I checked the odometer. Marked the number with my eyes. Waited. Drove for 10 minutes. Still 12 miles. The music changed. A voice now. Not lyrics. Just speech. My voice. I knew it instantly. The slight rasp on certain syllables, the hesitations between thoughts. But I didn't remember saying what it was saying. Turn left when it ends, the other car won't stop, but you can still merge if you time it. I shut off the audio system completely. The sound continued. I glanced at the center console. The controls were dark, but the voice kept playing, low and deliberate. You'll pass your own exit, but don't react. That's important. I gripped the wheel tighter. Focused on the lines ahead. After another few minutes, the voice faded. Then the song started again. Same one as before. Same strings. I pulled into the right lane and let off the gas. A white sedan passed on the left. Inside, the driver didn't look at me. But the shape of their head, their posture, it felt familiar. Same tilt. Same jawline. Like seeing myself through frosted glass. The car had the same air freshener hanging from the mirror. Same crack on the passenger side windshield. I sped up. Tried to keep pace. The sedan held steady. I took the next exit without signaling. Just veered off as smoothly as I could. The ramp curved into a frontage road with no name. No traffic. No signs. Only a long stretch of concrete flanked by scrub and low hills. The same song played, but now there was static beneath it. Faint. Not constant. More like the breath between signals. The road led to a small gravel lot. I pulled in. The engine idled quietly. I checked the rear view. Nothing behind me. Nothing at all. The sedan didn't follow. I sat for a while, watching the dashboard clock tick forward. 10:16. 10:17. 10:18. 10:18. 10:18. Then, finally, 10:19. The repetition was subtle. But real. I got out. The ground crunched beneath my boots. Cold, hard-packed gravel. I walked a few feet ahead and looked out across the plain. No roads. No towns. Just empty landscape, cut by wind and time. When I turned back, the car looked different. Not entirely. Just a few things. The antenna was missing. The left rear tire had a different brand. The color looked slightly darker in the light, closer to charcoal than gray. I stepped closer. The driver's seat wasn't pushed back the way I liked it. The air inside smelled sharper. Chemical. The mirror had no scratch. I opened the door. The keys were still in the ignition. I hadn't left them there. I patted my pocket. Keys. Still there. I stared at them. 2 identical key fobs. Same wear pattern. Same fading on the unlock button. I opened the glove box. 2 sets of registration papers. One with my name. One with the same name, but a different middle initial. Same address. Same date of birth. But different signature. I closed the box. Left the papers where they were. Sat down in the driver's seat. Turned the ignition. The engine started without hesitation. The radio played my voice again. Just keep driving. The difference won't matter much now. I didn't touch anything. I just backed out. And rejoined the highway. The mile marker ahead read 312. I passed it. 5 minutes later, another marker, 312. Again. Again. The car didn't stall. The music didn't stop. But the voice whispered one last thing before fading completely. If you look in the mirror, it'll be someone else. I didn't look. I kept both hands on the wheel. The road kept stretching ahead. And the sky. Well, it stopped changing a while ago. Somewhere between Rawlins and Elk Mountain, I stopped trying to track the miles. The odometer still worked, but I didn't trust it. Numbers kept rising, but the scenery didn't change. Same stretches of burrow grass, same skeletal trees hunched against the wind, same flat light filtering through thin clouds. It felt like the road was repeating beneath me, frame by frame, like film caught in a loop. The radio was off now. I hadn't turned it off, but it had gone silent. No voice. No music. Not even static. Just a faint hum from the vents, and the sound of tires cutting through the cold. I passed a blue sedan that looked familiar. It had the same little crack in the rear taillight as mine. A plastic key tag still hung from the back bumper, swaying with every bump. The driver didn't glance over. I did. The back of his head looked too still. I slowed down, let him pull ahead. Watched as he took the next exit, then disappeared behind a small hill. I kept straight. For a moment, I thought about pulling over. Just getting out. Sitting down on the shoulder until something changed. But I was afraid that if I stopped, the road wouldn't be there when I looked back up. The steering wheel felt warm under my palms. Not hot. Just body temperature, like someone else had been holding its seconds before I touched it. The glove compartment clicked open on its own during a long curve. I didn't flinch. I just looked down. The papers inside were neatly stacked, trip logs, fuel receipts, 2 IDs. One with my photo, the other with my name but a different face. Not completely different. More like a version of me that smiled slightly more. Or less. I closed the glove box gently. It didn't latch. I didn't try again. Outside, the light had stopped changing. No shift in shadows. No arc to the sun. Just a fixed brightness that sat on everything equally, like dust. The rearview mirror was angled down, pointed toward the dash. I hadn't adjusted it, but I didn't move it back. The warning from earlier still echoed faintly. If you look in the mirror, it'll be someone else. I didn't want to know what someone else meant. At the next rest stop, I pulled in. A single pickup truck was parked near the building, engine running. No driver. No footprints in the frost. I didn't turn off the car. Just sat there. Watched as a figure stepped out of the restroom building. Hooted. Walking slowly. I looked away before I could see the face. Instead, I stared at my hands on the wheel. They didn't feel wrong, but they didn't feel entirely mine either. The skin looked a little smoother than I remembered. The knuckles had fewer scars. I turned one hand over. No burn mark from when I dropped the soldering iron in college. I checked my wallet again. The license said Kevin Blake. Same address. Same birth date. But I didn't recognize the photograph. The man was smiling. Wide. Clean haircut. I hadn't looked like that in years. I opened the driver's door and stepped out. The air hit me like a thought I'd forgotten, familiar but unreachable. I walked to the vending machines. All the snacks were things I used to eat in high school. I pressed a button for a candy bar I hadn't touched in over a decade. It dropped. Still fresh. No dust. No rattle. I didn't open it. As I turned to leave, I caught my reflection in the glass. Not distorted. Not warped. Just wrong. The shape was mine, but the posture was too relaxed. Like whoever I was looking at didn't know I was watching. I walked back to the car. Slowly. Inside, the dashboard clock read 10:18. Still. Hadn't moved in over an hour. I pulled onto the highway again. The exit signs were blank. No town names. No distances. Just white boards on green posts. Ahead, a car appeared. Same make. Same color. Same dent. I followed. It didn't change lanes. Didn't slow. When it finally exited, I followed again. The ramp led into a parking lot behind a building with no signs. I stopped behind the car. Engine still running. Windows fogged from the inside. I stepped out. Walked up to the driver's side. Knocked once. The window lowered. I was in the driver's seat. Not someone who looked like me. Me. Older, maybe. More tired. But definitely me. I leaned in slightly. He didn't speak. He just looked at me and reached toward the passenger seat. Held something up. My keys. Not a copy. My keys. The keychain with the chipped plastic compass. The red tag from the hotel in Provo. The bottle opener I never used. He set them down between us. Then closed the window. I stepped back. Watched as the car backed out slowly. Turned. Pulled away. I stood there for a long time, keys in hand, not sure what to unlock. Eventually, I walked back to my own car. Started the engine. The radio clicked on. One final line, in my voice. You'll feel normal again soon. But you won't know why. I put the car in gear. Drove toward the next stretch. Didn't look back. Didn't touch the mirror. Final line. Somewhere out there, the other one's still driving, but he never looks in the mirror, and neither do I.